Hello, the story I want to tell you today happened in the state of California, the United States, a place often imagined with golden sunshine, endless beaches, and countless American dreams. But for an 11-year-old girl named Jaycee Dugard, California became the beginning of a nightmare that lasted 18 long years.
Part 1. A Peaceful Life Before the Nightmare.
Jaycee was born on May 3, 1980. She was a sweet, gentle girl who deeply loved animals. She lived with her mother, Terry Probin, stepfather Carl, and her younger sister in a modest house in South Lake Tahoe, a small, tranquil town near the Sierra Nevada mountains. Her family wasn't rich, but their home was always filled with warmth, laughter, and love. Jaycee especially adored cats. Her bedroom was filled with posters of animals, books about wildlife, and a small but passionate dream to become a wildlife biologist and live close to nature, surrounded by animals she cherished. On the morning of June 10, 1991, the sun shone gently, the air crisp and clear as it had always been. Jaycee woke up early, had breakfast with her mom, and prepared herself for school. The school wasn't too far, and she usually walked to her school bus stop alone. That day, she wore her favorite pink shirt and carried a purple backpack decorated with her beloved cat image. Jaycee hugged and kissed her mom goodbye as she left home, completely unaware it would be the last embrace they'd share for nearly 2 decades. On her way to the bus stop, Jaycee walked along a quiet stretch of road, lined with a few trees and a slight slope. Suddenly, a grayish-silver Ford slowly approached from behind. A man stepped out of the driver's side, a white male, balding with sunken eyes. Pretending to ask Jaycee for directions, he quickly took out a stun gun, shocking her and causing her to collapse to the ground. As Jaycee lay paralyzed, convulsing, she was unable to resist. Within seconds, a woman emerged from the passenger side of the vehicle, helping the man carry Jaycee swiftly into the car. The car sped off, leaving nothing behind but stunned silence. Jaycee's stepfather, Carl Probin, witnessed the kidnapping from home. Carl recounted seeing 2 people in a mid-sized gray car, turning the car around at the school bus stop where Jaycee was standing. Then, a woman forced the girl into the car. Carl chased them on his bicycle but couldn't catch up. Jaycee's disappearance sent shockwaves through the entire South Lake Tahoe community. The local police, search dogs, and helicopters were deployed immediately. Her devastated mother frantically called for any information, and soon Jaycee's face appeared everywhere, on television, newspapers, and thousands of missing person flyers scattered across town. Yet, no one had any idea that she had been taken nearly 300 kilometers away, to the remote town of Antioch, and fallen into the grasp of monsters wearing human faces.
Part 2. The Backyard Prison, Where the Nightmare Begins.
By the time Jaycee regained some clarity, the car had arrived at a secluded residence in Antioch, California, tucked away from prying eyes and surrounded by high fences. Little did she know, this house would become the dark prison that held her captive for the next 18 harrowing years, a place cleverly hidden from the world, wrapped in silence, and drenched in secrecy. Day after agonizing day passed, with Jaycee trapped between confusion and despair. Philip Garrido exerted total dominance over her life, using various manipulative tactics ranging from false, gentle words to harsh threats and intimidation. His unpredictable shifts between kindness and cruelty left Jaycee bewildered, unsure of which version of Philip was real and which was merely a mask concealing his cruel intentions. Within the house's backyard area, hidden meticulously behind thick fences, Jaycee was utterly isolated from the outside world. Every possible escape route was closely monitored, leaving no room for even the smallest hope of freedom. Whenever she saw someone pass by the window or heard distant voices, her loneliness intensified. There was nobody to rescue her, no comforting words from anyone beyond these oppressive walls. Unknown to Jaycee, while she endured those terrible first days in Antioch, her family and community searched relentlessly for any clue leading to her whereabouts. Police, volunteers, posters, flyers, every possible effort was exhausted in desperate attempts to find her. Yet, due to the cunning secrecy maintained by Philip and Nancy Garrido, it seemed Jaycee had vanished into thin air, swallowed completely by darkness and silence. As nighttime descended, the silence of the house mingled with haunting memories of her past, creating a profoundly eerie atmosphere that left her trapped in introspection. To Jaycee, the house was not just a physical prison, it was a spiritual and emotional confinement, where loneliness, fear, and heartbreak thrived unchecked.
Part 3. Life in Captivity, the hidden pain within.
Every morning, Jaycee awoke to the same suffocating darkness. Tiny beams of sunlight occasionally slipped through narrow cracks around the sealed windows, creating small pools of dim light on the cold floor. The ticking of a clock somewhere nearby was often her only company, a constant reminder that time continued to move forward without her. There was no laughter, no warmth, no comforting presence, just an aching emptiness, and the haunting memories of the life she'd lost. In that house, Philip Garrido and Nancy Garrido used various tactics to control her. Sometimes, they acted overly kind, claiming they wanted her to be well cared for, as if it were the act of a family member. But then, cold actions and threatening words quickly took over, leaving Jaycee feeling confused. She was forced to obey every command, unable to satisfy any of the desires for freedom that a growing child might have. Each day that passed, Jaycee learned to live with mixed emotions, between hope and despair, between belief in a brighter tomorrow and the fear of losing the present. Occasionally, Jaycee was allowed to briefly step outside into the enclosed backyard area, always under close supervision. Even these small moments of limited freedom were precious. During these brief outings, Jaycee looked up at the open sky, letting herself imagine freedom beyond the fences that imprisoned her. She observed clouds drifting peacefully overhead, desperately longing to be free like them. Though brief and fleeting, these precious moments sustained her, giving her strength to survive the darkest hours. Within her quiet desperation, Jaycee learned to cultivate inner resilience. She found ways to cope with the loneliness, fear, and uncertainty. Writing secretly in small notebooks given to her occasionally by Philip became a way to cope, to document her thoughts, her sorrow, and her dreams. Each word she scribbled was a silent testimony to her ordeal, a whispered plea for rescue, a reminder to herself that she was still alive and fighting to hold on to her humanity. And so, between the dim mornings and the silent, unresolved nights, Jaycee Dugard gradually created her own inner world, a place she could lean on, finding some comfort, even if it came only from herself. In the prison of pain and memories, she quietly nurtured the dream of one day returning to the outside world, of a day when laughter and freedom would be restored. These thoughts, though fragile, became the source of strength that kept her going, helping her to believe that one day, all the wounds would heal and she would return to the life that was truly hers.
Part 4. Hope shining through the cracks of oppression.
Throughout those long months and years of captivity, Jaycee Dugard slowly matured, both physically and emotionally, within the suffocating confines of Philip and Nancy Garrido's home. Despite the harsh conditions, deprivation, and relentless suffering, she never stopped grasping at the thin strands of hope that occasionally came her way. Each time she was allowed outside, even if only for brief moments in the heavily supervised backyard, Jaycee would gaze upward, breathing deeply, savoring the fresh air and imagining herself back in the wide, open world she had lost. There were days when Philip wasn't home, and only Nancy Garrido lingered around. Nancy often behaved unpredictably. Sometimes she was warm and asked about Jaycee, while at other times she was cold, even somewhat jealous, seeing Jaycee as a threat to be suppressed. In the rare moments when Nancy acted kindly, offering food and blankets to Jaycee, the girl clung to that fleeting kindness like a fragile lifeline in the vast ocean, hoping that somehow she could escape this prison. However, just one action that displeased Nancy would quickly turn her attitude to anger, hurling harsh words at Jaycee and accusing her of stealing Philip's affections. These abnormal psychological shifts made Jaycee unsure of what to expect during each encounter. Gradually, she learned to remain silent, protecting herself by compromising with every demand, trying to avoid making any noise or causing trouble. She knew that just one small slip-up could lead to harsh punishment, or the sudden threat of abuse from Philip. Time continued to pass, and Jaycee gradually moved through the early stages of adolescence and into adulthood. The girl she once was began to feel the changes in her body and the psychological burdens of adulthood that she should never have had to endure. She longed for a stranger to accidentally discover where she was being kept or to hear a cry for help and then call the police. However, this house seemed perfectly concealed behind thick walls, and no one paid attention to what was happening inside. Occasionally, Philip would display kind actions, such as giving Jaycee a notebook to write in or allowing her to briefly watch an old television program. It was during these moments that Jaycee could touch something resembling the outside world. Each face on the TV, each piece of music, or even a passing advertisement reminded her of the free life she once had, when she would have dinner with her mother and sister or go on weekend outings. She recorded all of these impressions, as if every small detail could create a picture of hope for the future. But over time, Philip's control grew stronger. He not only treated Jaycee as a possession to satisfy his needs, but he also seemed to find ways to suppress any chance of her escaping to the outside world. All correspondence, news, and social networks were severed. Even the backyard was enclosed with taller fences and additional tarps to block the view. Whenever there were visitors, Jaycee was forced to hide in temporary, poorly constructed rooms with no light, no escape. In this dark environment, the longing for family and memories of a joyful childhood sparked a fire in Jaycee. She clung to memories of her mother's smile, the smell of toasted bread in the morning, and the image of the scenic lakefront in South Lake Tahoe. She believed that as long as she could keep these images vivid in her mind, she would still have the will and strength to wait for a miracle or for the time when she could find a way out on her own. Meanwhile, outside that house, life and the world continued. Jaycee's family, especially her mother, never gave up. Terry continued her search for her daughter, making phone calls every day, meeting with search groups, updating flyers, and urging anyone with any information to help bring Jaycee home. The bond of motherhood, along with the unending pain, became the driving force for her mother to keep going, never losing faith that her daughter was still alive. Indeed, it was the persistent belief from family and society that kept Jaycee's case from fading into obscurity, unlike many other abduction cases. Her name continued to be mentioned, her image still posted, and years passed without her being forgotten. It was a small but unextinguished flame of hope. It waited for the day when the mysterious curtain covering Philip Garrido's house would be lifted, to illuminate the path home for Jaycee.
Part 5, The Storms in Silence, Jaycee and the Invisible Struggle.
For the long years of captivity, Jaycee Dugard's life was like a silent battle with herself, a fight that no one knew about except for her. There were no gunshots, no cries for help, but within Jaycee, there were constant violent storms of memories, fears, and a yearning for freedom, pulling at her every day. As she entered adolescence, Jaycee's body began to change, but all her understanding was limited to what Philip Garrido and his wife told her. Without schooling or social interaction, the young girl had no clear concept of the transformations happening within herself. Then one day, Jaycee discovered she was pregnant. It was a terrifying shock to the girl who wasn't mature enough to understand what was happening. But she had no one to share or talk to about it. There was no loved one to comfort her. The confusion swallowed her whole, hour by hour, day by day. Jaycee gave birth to her first child in that small, cold, dark room. There was no medical help, except for Nancy Garrido, who had no medical knowledge and was not truly interested in helping her. All Jaycee could do was grit her teeth and hope her baby would be safe. She gave birth to a lively baby girl. When she first held her child in her arms, Jaycee felt the sacred and powerful bond of motherhood. The baby became a small light in the darkness of her life. It was at that moment that Jaycee swore to herself she would do anything to protect her child, even if it meant sacrificing her own life. Philip Garrido, with his absolute control, did not allow Jaycee to go outside or communicate with anyone, even after she gave birth. However, he slowly began to change, sometimes being more lenient. Yet, this change was only fake and deliberate. He wanted her to become more dependent on him, to feel increasingly helpless and desperate, so she couldn't even think about escaping. Jaycee became pregnant for the second time not long after. And once again, she had to go through everything alone. She gave birth under terrible conditions, lacking almost everything, but she endured for her children. Though the two children were the result of tragedy, they were also the only reason she kept going, trying every day. Every time she looked at their small, innocent faces as they peacefully slept, Jaycee reminded herself to stay strong, to keep breathing, to keep living, because now she wasn't just living for herself. The days of raising her children in secret were the most terrifying moments of Jaycee's life. She feared that if she did anything wrong, her children would be taken away. Jaycee's world became smaller and smaller, but her heart grew larger with maternal love. She began teaching her children the little things she knew, even though it wasn't much. She told them stories about the world outside, about their grandmother, and about her sister. Every night, Jaycee gently held her two children close and whispered in their ears,
"One day, we will be free. I promise you."
Meanwhile, Philip Garrido became more and more immersed in his delusional fantasies. He began to believe that he was chosen to spread mystical messages, that he could change people and save society through crazy methods. He wrote prophecies and created his own religion, with himself as the messenger. Jaycee and her children were forced to listen to his absurd declarations. They were completely isolated and had no idea what was happening in the world outside. In the long years of living like this, Jaycee Dugard never gave up hope, even if it was fragile. For her, hope was a luxury but an essential one, like air. She tried to keep her mind clear because she knew she couldn't afford to fall apart. During her loneliest moments, when it seemed there was nothing left to cling to, Jaycee thought about her childhood dreams, her family, and the people who were tirelessly searching for her. That was the invisible strength that helped her survive, that kept her from collapsing under endless hardships. Time continued to silently pass in the stillness, in tears, and in the invisible storms within Jaycee. Her life was a relentless invisible battle, but she never surrendered to fate. Though each passing day was a terrible challenge, Jaycee continued to hope for a miracle to appear.
Part 6. The light at the end of the tunnel, the unexpected rescue.
On August 24, 2009, the day began like any other in Antioch, California. Jaycee woke up in the house still submerged in the darkness of Philip Garrido, where she and her two daughters had been held captive for many years. Life seemed to continue as usual with the familiar hopeless days, but today, everything would be different. That morning, Philip Garrido woke up earlier than usual, with a strange plan he had been preparing for a long time. Garrido, now increasingly deep into his delusions, wanted to publicly share his teachings with the outside world to spread what he called the salvation of the world. He decided to go to the University of California, Berkeley, bringing along flyers and his bizarre plans. Garrido took Jaycee and his two daughters with him. This was not the first time they were taken outside, but they were always under his strict control, never once free from his watchful eyes. At the university, Garrido met with several people to introduce his teachings and his delusional statements. While he was enthusiastically explaining to the school staff, Jaycee and her two daughters stood silently beside him, saying nothing. This scene caught the attention of two campus security officers, Ally Jacobs and Lisa Campbell. Their professional instincts and sharp perception made them sense that something was very unusual. The two security officers closely observed the strange man with the three young women and noticed their fearful, evasive behavior, avoiding any interaction with anyone except Philip Garrido. Seeing these clear signs of distress, they decided to quietly record the information and collect Garrido's identity and contact details, citing the need to verify before arranging another meeting. Immediately, Ally Jacobs and Lisa Campbell checked Garrido's background and quickly discovered the horrifying truth. Philip Garrido was a convicted sex offender with a long history of crimes and was under parole supervision. This information was quickly sent to the local parole office. The next day, the parole office requested Garrido to appear for a meeting. When he arrived at the office with Jaycee and her 2 daughters, the officers immediately noticed something was wrong. Garrido was quickly separated for questioning while Jaycee and her 2 daughters sat silently in another room. In a tense interrogation that lasted for hours, Garrido initially denied all suspicions, trying to justify the presence of the 3 women in his home. But his statements increasingly revealed contradictions and raised suspicions. Law enforcement decided to have a private conversation with Jaycee. For the first time in 18 years, Jaycee sat face to face with those who could rescue her. Initially, she was terrified and confused, too accustomed to Garrido's control and threats. But when she saw the sincerity in the officer's eyes, Jaycee suddenly felt a glimmer of hope, something she had longed for every day during the dark years. After several conversations and reassuring words from the officers, Jaycee finally broke down in tears and revealed her true identity, something she had been forced to hide for nearly 2 decades. Through tears, Jaycee quietly whispered,
"My name is Jaycee Lee Dugard."
Those words struck like a thunderclap, shattering the cloudy sky. The law enforcement officers immediately recognized that this was the girl who had been kidnapped from South Lake Tahoe in 1991, a case they thought would never be solved. The news of Jaycee Dugard being found alive spread quickly, sending shockwaves across the United States. Just hours later, Philip and Nancy Garrido were immediately arrested. Meanwhile, Jaycee Dugard and her 2 daughters were taken to a safe place, beginning their journey of recovery and returning to the life she had lost so long ago. At Jaycee's mother's house, the phone rang late at night. The mother, who had never stopped searching for her daughter for 18 years, received the call informing her that Jaycee was alive and waiting for her. It was the most emotional moment of her life, the happiest yet most painful day when she learned that her daughter had suffered so much all these years. Jaycee Dugard had finally escaped from the darkness of her life, taking her first steps back into the outside world. Everything seemed unfamiliar to her, but the most important thing was that she was free, returned to the loving arms of her family, and those who had never given up hope of finding her. After 18 long years, life had finally delivered justice to Jaycee Dugard. The tears that day were not just of sorrow, but of overwhelming happiness and a powerful belief in the strength of hope, the power of love.
Part 7. The Journey of Recovery and Rebirth, the Light Behind the Darkness.
The day Jaycee Dugard regained her freedom, her world seemed to explode in happiness. But in reality, the journey of recovery after 18 years of captivity was anything but easy. Jaycee not only had to confront painful memories but also had to relearn how to live in the world that had been taken from her when she was just a child. Immediately after her rescue, Jaycee and her 2 daughters were taken to a safe location, away from the attention of the media and society. The young woman was now 29 years old, but her soul was still that of a deeply wounded girl. In the early days with her family, she was constantly disoriented by the care and love she had forgotten over the painful years. Her mother, Terry Probin, hugged her daughter tightly, tears streaming down her face, constantly whispering apologies for not being able to protect her. Jaycee was reunited with her sister, someone who had been just a child when Jaycee disappeared, but who was now grown up. These precious moments of reunion were filled with tears and smiles, but also with silences, as they all understood that they would need much time to heal the deep wounds in their hearts. Philip and Nancy Garrido were quickly brought to trial, facing harsh sentences for the crimes they had committed. In April 2011, Philip Garrido was sentenced to 431 years in prison, while Nancy Garrido received a sentence of 36 years to life. The trial was marked by emotional testimonies from Jaycee, describing in detail the pain she had endured, leaving a deep impact on the community. Returning to daily life, Jaycee gradually realized that freedom was not just about being released from captivity, but was a journey of facing memories, healing wounds, and learning how to live again in the present. She decided to write her life story through the book, A Stolen Life, published in 2011. The book quickly became a bestseller across the United States and around the world. Jaycee Dugard shared with readers the most authentic details of the pain she had experienced, while spreading a powerful message about the strength of love, perseverance, and the ability to recover from the most horrific traumas. After the release of her book, Jaycee also founded the Jaycee Foundation, aimed at supporting victims of kidnapping and abuse, while helping the community become more aware of the importance of child protection and preventing violence. Through the foundation, she shared her story with more people, helping others who had suffered trauma find hope and belief that they too could heal and continue living their lives. Jaycee also began to spend time for herself, something she never thought she would have the chance to do before. She learned how to enjoy the simplest things in life, like walking in the park, taking care of pets, or simply watching the sunrise every morning, things that once seemed small but were now deeply meaningful to her. Her two daughters, after living in the darkness for so long, slowly began to adapt to their newfound freedom, getting an education, making friends, and participating in social activities just like any other normal child. Despite being born from tragedy, Jaycee always told her children that they were the most precious gifts she had, the strength that had helped her survive all those dark years. Throughout her recovery journey, Jaycee faced moments of doubt, fear, and pain as she reflected on her past. But she always reminded herself that now, she was no longer alone. Her family, friends, community, and loved ones were all by her side, walking with her every step of the way on this path to rebirth. In the years following her rescue, Jaycee was frequently invited to share her story at schools and various events, helping to raise awareness in the community about child safety, preventing violence, and abuse. She stood strong before crowds, recounting her painful journey, but not to invoke sorrow, but to spread a powerful and profound message, that hope is something that never dies if we keep it in our hearts. Today, Jaycee Dugard continues to live a simple, peaceful life with her family and her daughters. She does not deny her past, for it is those very experiences that have made her the strong and resilient person she is today. Her life has become a living testament to the extraordinary power of the human will, the ability to recover powerfully from pain that seemed impossible to overcome. Jaycee once said during a public talk,
"You can't change what's happened to you, but you can choose how you move forward. That's the greatest power we have."
And indeed, Jaycee Dugard's life is no longer just a story of tragedy. It has become a living symbol of hope, courage, and the boundless capacity for human recovery. The light has finally pierced through the darkness, helping her find herself again and begin a new life, a life full of love, meaning, and true freedom. Today's video ends here. Thank you for listening. Your like and subscribe will be our motivation. See you again in the next video. Goodbye.